In 1590, a man sailed back to America after 3 years away and found nothing. Not a battle, not bodies, not a single clue about what happened to the 115 people he left behind. Just empty houses, buried furniture, and one single word carved into a wooden post. That word has haunted historians, archaeologists, and researchers for over 430 years, and to this day, nobody knows what happened. This is the story of the lost colony of Roanoke, the oldest unsolved mystery in American history. But before we get into it, I want you to sit with a few questions. 115 people just vanished. No bones, no graves, no signs of a fight. How does an entire group of men, women, and children disappear without leaving a single body behind? The leader of the colony, a man named John White, left to get supplies and came back 3 years later to find everyone gone. But here's the thing, he wasn't panicking when he found the site. Why? And that one word carved into the tree, Croatoan, what does it actually mean? Is it a clue, a goodbye, or something else entirely? And maybe the biggest question of all, why don't we know the answer yet? We've had over 4 centuries to figure this out. So why is this case still open? Keep those questions in your head because we're going to answer all of them. Let's go back to the late 1500s. England is desperate to compete with Spain, which has been pulling gold and silver out of the Americas for decades and becoming one of the most powerful empires in the world. Queen Elizabeth I needs colonies, she needs land in the New World, and she needs someone ambitious enough to make it happen. Enter Sir Walter Raleigh, charming, well-connected, and completely obsessed with the idea of an English presence in America. In 1584, Elizabeth granted him a charter to explore and settle the eastern coast of North America. He sent scouts ahead. They came back with reports of fertile land and a promising island off the coast of what is now North Carolina, Roanoke Island. It sounded perfect. The first group of colonists landed in 1585, about 108 men, soldiers, craftsmen, explorers, no women, no children, and almost immediately things fell apart. Relations with the local native tribes broke down fast, partly because of genuine misunderstandings, and partly because the English made some catastrophically bad decisions, including burning an entire native village over a stolen silver cup. Food ran short, morale collapsed. When a supply ship arrived in 1586, they packed up and went home. Round 1 failed. But Raleigh wasn't done. In 1587, a second expedition set out, and this time it was different. This wasn't just soldiers. This was 115 men, women, and children, families, people who were meant to stay permanently. Leading them was John White, an artist and cartographer who had been on the first expedition and actually knew the land. He was experienced, capable, and genuinely believed in the mission. He was also about to become the most tragic figure in this entire story. They landed on Roanoke Island in July 1587, and the tension started immediately. The previous settlement was overgrown and falling apart. One of the men left behind as a caretaker was found dead, just bones. And within days of arriving, one of White's men was killed by a native arrow while he was out alone crabbing near the shore. Despite all of this, life continued. The settlers rebuilt, they established contact with the Croatoan tribe, a friendly group on a nearby island led by a man named Monteo, who had actually traveled to England twice and was a genuine ally. And then, in the middle of all this chaos, something remarkable happened.
On August 18th, 1587, a baby girl was born. Her name was Virginia Dare, the first English child ever born in the Americas, and her grandfather, the man who held her and recorded her birth, was John White. A few weeks later, White made the decision that would haunt him forever. The colony was running dangerously low on supplies, and someone needed to sail back to England to get more. The colonists trusted White more than anyone. They asked him to go. He didn't want to leave, but he went. Before he left, they made an agreement. If the settlers had to relocate for any reason, they would carve the name of their destination into a tree or post. If they left under danger or distress, they would add a cross above it as a signal. White said goodbye to his daughter, his granddaughter Virginia, and 113 other people, and he sailed away. He never saw any of them again. Getting back to England was easy. Getting back to America was 3 years of pure helplessness. White arrived expecting to load up a ship and turn straight back around, but Spain was launching the Armada, a massive fleet aimed at invading England, and Queen Elizabeth ordered every ship to stay. White was stuck. He managed to get 2 small vessels approved, but their captains made the mistake of picking a fight with a Spanish ship they couldn't handle and limped back to port before reaching America. By the time the Armada was defeated and travel was possible again, 3 years had passed. White finally got passage on a privateering expedition in early 1590. Not ideal, but the only option available. They reached Roanoke in August 1590. White was on deck spanning the shore when he saw smoke rising from the trees. His heart jumped. Smoke meant people. Smoke meant fire. Smoke meant they were still there. The crew spent the rest of the day finding rough, shallow waters to reach the island. One of the small boats capsized. Several men drowned. By the time they made it ashore, it was dark, and White was calling out into the night, shouting names, playing a trumpet, singing English songs the settlers would recognize. No response.
In the morning, they found the source of the smoke, a patch of burning grass, probably started by lightning. Not a camp, not a signal, nothing. They walked to the settlement. The houses were gone, not burned, not destroyed, dismantled. The timber removed carefully, deliberately. The area was heavily overgrown, meaning nobody had been here in a long time. The settlers' heavy belongings, iron bars, equipment, furniture, had been buried in the ground, like someone was planning to come back for them. And then White found it. Carved into one of the wooden posts at the entrance, 8 letters, Croatoan. No cross above it, no distress signal, just the name. White knew exactly what it meant. Croatoan was the island 50 miles south, home of Monteo's people, the one tribe that had been genuinely friendly. This was the signal they had agreed on. They had moved, and they had told him where. But White never made it to Croatoan Island. The ship's captains were done. Storms were rolling in, supplies were low, and they had a privateering mission that didn't include a detour to chase a 3-year-old mystery. They agreed to attempt Croatoan, but the anchors dragged in the rough seas, the ships got pushed off course, and the decision was made to head for the Caribbean and resupply, then try again. They never tried again. White went back to England and spent the rest of his life writing letters that nobody answered, about people that nobody came looking for. He never organized another expedition. He never found out what happened to his daughter, his granddaughter Virginia Dare, or any of the 113 people he had left on that island. He died around 1593, still not knowing. That's the part of this story that hits hardest when you sit with it. Not just the mystery itself, but this man, this grandfather, who fought for 3 years to get back and found nothing but a word on a tree, and then spent whatever time he had left never getting an answer. So what actually happened to them? The first and most widely supported theory is that the colonists integrated with the Croatoan tribe. Look at the evidence. The word carved into the post was Croatoan, the name of their one genuine ally. No cross above it, meaning no distress. Their belongings were carefully buried, not scattered in panic. The houses were taken apart, not burned. Everything about the scene points to a planned, organized departure, not an emergency, not an attack. The Croatoan people had real ties to these settlers. Manteo had been to England. He spoke some English. He understood them in a way most other tribes simply couldn't. If you're 115 people running out of food in an unfamiliar land, with hostile tribes on most sides, and one friendly community 50 miles away, you go to the friendly community. It's not complicated. It's just survival. And the evidence doesn't stop at the carving. In the early 1700s, explorer John Lawson visited the Hatteras tribe, direct descendants of the Croatoan, on what is now Hatteras Island. He wrote that many of them claimed to have English ancestors, that some had noticeably lighter features than surrounding tribes, and that a few already knew English words when he made first contact. More recently, in 2012, the First Colony Foundation made a significant discovery. They were studying a detailed map drawn by John White himself when they noticed something unusual, a patch that had been added on top of part of the map, covering something underneath. When they examined it under different light spectrums, they found a hidden symbol, a fort drawn in the interior of what is now North Carolina, miles inland from Roanoke Island, a location that had never been part of any official plan. Excavations at that site, now called Site X in Bertie County, North Carolina, have since turned up fragments of English pottery and tools from the late 1500s, English artifacts in a place where no English person was supposed to be. It's not a definitive answer, but it suggests the colonists may have split up, some heading south to Croatoan Island, others moving inland, and that instead of dying, they adapted. They survived by becoming part of the communities already there.
The second theory is darker, and it's the one that gets the most dramatic treatment whenever this story gets adapted for TV. When English settlers arrived at Jamestown in 1607, 20 years after Roanoke, a powerful chief named Powhatan told them something unsettling. He claimed that there had been people living to the south, near the coast, who had been mixing with a rival tribe called the Chesapeake, and that he had personally ordered them wiped out just before the English arrived. He reportedly showed the Jamestown settlers copper and iron objects that could only have come from English settlers. It's a chilling claim, and it can't be dismissed entirely. Powhatan was a real, historically documented figure with genuine power over a large confederacy of tribes. He wasn't just making things up. But here's the problem. Powhatan was also deeply strategic. Telling the new English arrivals that he had already destroyed one group of English people was a calculated move, equal parts warning and display of dominance. He had every reason to exaggerate or shape that story to his advantage, and once again, no physical evidence of a massacre has ever been found. No mass graves, no battlefield, nothing. The third theory is simpler and arguably more grounded in hard science than either of the others. In 1998, researchers from the University of Arkansas published a study based on growth rings from ancient cypress trees in the Roanoke region. The rings told them exactly what the climate looked like year by year, and what they found was that 1587 to 1589, the exact years the colonists were alone with no resupply, represented the most severe drought the region had experienced in 800 years. The worst dry spell in nearly a millennium, hitting at the exact moment these settlers needed water and crops the most. This doesn't suggest they were killed, it suggests they had no choice but to leave. And when you combine it with the integration theory, the picture becomes coherent. They didn't abandon Roanoke because they wanted to. They left because the land itself couldn't support them anymore. And when they left, they went to the one place where people knew how to survive it.
Here's what makes Roanoke genuinely different from most cold cases. Most unsolved historical mysteries are unsolved because the records are gone or were never written down. But with Roanoke, we have John White's journals, we have his maps, including that hidden symbol. We have accounts from Jamestown settlers. We have the physical site. We have the carving. We have a lot, and we still don't have a final answer. Part of the reason is the 3-year gap. If White had returned in 1588 as planned, he might have found them still on the island or found fresh tracks heading south. He came back to a site that had been empty long enough for trees to grow through it. The trail wasn't just cold, it was buried. And part of the reason, honestly, is that the most likely answer isn't dramatic enough to feel like a proper ending. If the colonists walked south, joined the Croatoan, learned new ways to fish and farm, had children, and gradually became part of a community that survived for generations, there's no climax to that story, no discovery, no resolution. Just people making a smart, pragmatic decision to survive, and surviving so completely that there's almost no trace left to find. The archaeological work at Site X is still ongoing. Researchers continue to find small pieces of evidence, post holes suggesting European-style structures, more fragments of English ceramics, traces of habitation that don't belong to any known native settlement of that period. It's slow, painstaking work, but it's real, and it's building towards something. The answer, when it finally comes, if it finally comes, probably won't be a single dramatic discovery. It'll be an accumulation. A ceramic fragment here, a post hole there, a genetic study, a re-examined map, the picture filling in one small piece at a time until it's undeniable. And when that happens, the story of the lost colony of Roanoke will stop being a mystery about disappearance and start being a story about survival. About 115 people who were abandoned by their country, cut off from everything they knew, and found a way to keep going anyway. They carved one word into a tree before they left. Not a cry for help, not a warning, just a name. The name of the people who were willing to take them in. Croatoan. Maybe that word was a clue for John White. Maybe it was a goodbye to the world they came from. Maybe it was both. But if the evidence is pointing in the right direction, that word wasn't the end of their story. It was the beginning of a new one.